Like and subscribe if you want to dive into the twisted world of history, where the bizarre is just a Tuesday. Ever wondered what medieval punishment involved a giant pot of boiling water? Or which ancient civilization thought it was a good idea to treat their slaves like pets? Stick around, because we're about to uncover some jaw-dropping oddities that'll keep you awake, and maybe even questioning your life choices. First up, let's talk about the Roman Empire. Imagine a society so obsessed with entertainment that they held gladiator battles, where your favorite fighter might just be your next-door neighbor. And don't even get me started on the wedding traditions of the Middle Ages. Did you know that in certain regions, brides were expected to be carried off by their grooms? Romantic, right? Or should we just call it medieval kidnapping? And let's not forget about the infamous punishment known as hanged, drawn, and quartered. Yes, you heard that right. If you think your last breakup was brutal, try facing this fate in 13th century England. What kind of bad decisions lead to that, you ask? Well, maybe treason isn't the best career move. Are you still awake? Good. Because we're just getting started. In this video, you'll learn about the peculiar sexual practices of ancient cultures, the bizarre myths that shaped civilizations, and disasters that wiped out entire cities, all packed into a timeline that includes specific dates you won't believe. So, what's the deal with medieval medicine? Did they really think leeches were the cure for everything? Spoiler alert, they did. And why was the Black Death not just a plague, but a social upheaval that turned Europe upside down? Hit that loop button so this episode plays on repeat until your eyelids are heavier than an elephant on a seesaw. Buckle up, history buffs, it's going to be a wild ride. In the grand annals of history, where emperors rise and fall, and epic battles are fought, one might think the most riveting tales would come from the battlefields or the political intrigues of the Roman Empire. Yet, nestled within the mundane yet surprisingly complex confines of the Colosseum, lies an astonishingly drab tale that could make even the most jaded history buff sit up and take notice: the history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. Let's set the stage. Imagine, if you will, the Colosseum in Rome, circa 80 AD. The air is thick with anticipation, the roar of the crowd deafening as they await the clash of swords, the splattering of blood, and the spectacle of life and death played out before them. But wait! Before the gladiators can enter this grand arena, there's a crucial element that needs tending: the sand floor. Yes, you heard that right. The sand, an unassuming yet vital component of the arena, was not just a cushy landing pad for fallen gladiators. It served multiple purposes: absorbing blood, preventing gladiators from slipping, and providing a bit of cushion for those who might find themselves tumbling awkwardly after a particularly ill-fated thrust. So how did the Romans ensure this sandy battleground was in tip-top shape? Enter the gladiator sand floor raking protocols. The earliest records of these protocols date back to the late Republic, around 100 BC, when the first gladiatorial games began to gain popularity. The Romans, master organizers, quickly realized that a well-maintained sandy floor could mean the difference between an epic spectacle and a slapstick tragedy. A comedy of errors played out in the arena could turn the thrill of bloodlust into a genuine concern for a gladiator's well-being. Who wants to watch a warrior slip and fall on his own blood? Not the citizens of Rome, I assure you. By the time of Emperor Augustus in 27 BC, the sand floor was treated with the reverence it deserved. It was meticulously raked before each event, creating a smooth, even surface. Augustus himself was known to have decreed that the sand should be as fine as the powder of the gods, which, let's be honest, sounds a bit excessive, doesn't it? But hey, who are we to question the aesthetic preferences of a man who could have you executed for a mere snicker? The raking protocol was no simple task. It involved a detailed set of measurements and techniques that would make even the most fastidious of gardeners proud. The sand was typically around 10 centimeters deep, enough to cushion a falling gladiator without swallowing him whole. The rakes used were made of wood, often measuring about 1.5 meters in length, with a head wide enough to cover a significant area, approximately 50 centimeters across. The designated rake master, yes, a real job, would oversee the process, ensuring that the sand was evenly distributed. But let's not forget the gladiators themselves. Did you know that some of them took it upon themselves to add their flair to the sand floor? There are records of gladiators creating intricate designs in the sand before their battles. One particularly flamboyant gladiator, known as Marcus the Magnificent, was famous for drawing elaborate patterns resembling the constellations before each fight. Allegedly, he claimed it was to bring the stars down to earth, but in reality, it was probably just a clever distraction for his opponents. Did it work? Well, he did manage to win quite a few battles, though historians debate whether it was skill or sheer confusion on the part of his adversaries. Now, let's dive deeper into the absurdity of the raking protocols. For instance, did you know that there was a specific time of day designated for raking? According to records from around 50 AD, the sand was to be raked at dawn, precisely 1 hour before the games began. Why? Because, as one anonymous scribe put it, the sand must be kissed by the morning sun for optimal performance. I mean, who knew sand had such lofty expectations? Rake masters were required to wear special garments, often a drab brown tunic symbolizing their lowly status compared to the gladiators. But here's the kicker, they were also permitted to carry a small dagger for self-defense. Now, one must wonder, against whom were they defending themselves? The gladiators? The spectators? Or perhaps the angry sand that had been insulted by a poorly executed rake job? The mind boggles. And let's talk about the tools of the trade. The rakes were often adorned with inscriptions, humorous quips, or even gladiatorial team names. Yes, there were teams. The sand rakers, and the gladiator groomers, were some of the more absurd titles recorded. One particularly ambitious rake master, Gaius Flavius Rexus, even went as far as to have his rake engraved with the motto, "A clean sand is a happy sand." Truly, this man had the soul of a poet trapped in the body of a rake wielder. Fast forward to 100 AD, and we find ourselves at a pivotal moment in the evolution of sand raking protocols. The famous gladiatorial combatant, Spartacus, had recently risen to notoriety, and the games were becoming increasingly popular. Alongside the rise in popularity came a slew of new regulations. Enter the infamous Second Rake Law, which mandated that sand was to be raked no less than 3 times a day during festivals. Yes, you heard that right. 3 times. Who knew that the sands of time would also require regular grooming? One particularly chaotic festival in 112 AD saw the sand being raked not once, not twice, but 5 times, in a frenzied attempt to impress the visiting dignitaries from Gaul. This resulted in a chaotic scene where the sand was so meticulously groomed that it became a slippery, treacherous surface, leading to several gladiators hilariously slipping and sliding their way to victory. Imagine the crowd's uproarious laughter as 2 burly gladiators, each more muscular than the last, tumbled into a pile of sand, flailing like fish out of water. Who needs comedy when you have the slapstick of gladiatorial combat? As the years went on, the sand floor raking protocols only became more elaborate. By the reign of Emperor Nero, 54 to 68 AD, the raking had evolved into a near art form. The new sand artists were now a thing, individuals who specialized in creating patterns in the sand to symbolize themes of the games. Can you fathom the audacity of this? Gladiators were preparing for life-or-death battles while a bunch of artists played in the sand like children on a beach. One can only imagine the conversations among the gladiators, filled with disdain. Ah, yes, while I face a lion, you go ahead and draw a pretty picture in the sand. And let's take a moment to appreciate the absurdity of the Sand Color Committee. Yes, this was an actual group of officials who decided whether the sand used in the Colosseum was the right shade. The sand had to be a pleasing golden color, which led to complaints from rakers who often found themselves sifting through dark, gritty deposits. One rake master, in an act of sheer rebellion, was reported to have dyed the sand a bright pink for a special event, resulting in uproar and a stern reprimand. This is the Colosseum, not a carnival, the officials declared. One can only imagine the look on the faces of the gladiators who had to fight on that ludicrously vibrant sand. As the Roman Empire continued to expand and the games grew in popularity, so did the complexity of the raking protocols. By the time we reached the late 3rd century, the gladiatorial games were not just a spectacle but a matter of state pride. The importance of a well-maintained sand floor reached such absurd heights that the emperor himself would occasionally inspect the sand before a major event. Talk about a power trip. I command thee to rake this sand until it sparkles like the stars, he might have shouted, as the rake master scrambled to comply. In conclusion, the history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols is a tale marked by an odd blend of seriousness and absurdity. From the meticulous measurements of the sand to the eccentricities of the rake masters, this drab history reveals the lengths to which the Romans would go to ensure their gladiatorial games were not just battles of strength, but also aesthetic marvels. The next time you think of gladiators, remember that behind the blood and glory, there lay an entire subculture dedicated to making sure the sand was just right. After all, who could bear to watch a gladiator slip on poorly raked sand? Such a thing would surely bring shame to Rome. Hashtag the Drab History of Roman Gladiator Sand Floor Raking Protocols. The history of ancient Rome is filled with grand spectacles, political machinations, and a plethora of gladiators fighting for glory and survival. Yet, behind the roaring crowds and the clash of steel lies a surprisingly intricate system of floor maintenance, specifically, the raking of sand in the arena. It may seem mundane, but the methods, rules, and personnel involved in this task reveal a great deal about Roman society, bureaucracy, and its obsession with order. Hashtag construction methods and materials. The arena floors were typically constructed using a combination of local soil and sand, chosen for its ability to absorb moisture and provide a relatively forgiving surface for the combatants. The Romans were meticulous in their selection of materials. 1. Sand ** fine, granulated sand sourced from the Tiber River was preferred. It was lighter and less abrasive, allowing for easier movement and less injury, unless, of course, you tripped and fell on your sword. 2. Soil ** a layer of compacted soil was often placed beneath the sand. This created a stable base that could absorb impact and was easier to maintain. The soil was usually a blend of clay and loam, sourced from the outskirts of Rome. 3. Cost ** The cost of maintaining an arena floor was surprisingly high, with estimates suggesting that maintaining the sand could consume up to 10% of the annual budget of a gladiatorial school. With gladiators' lives hanging in the balance, it was a price the rich and powerful were willing to pay. Hashtag bureaucratic rules and punishments. Roman society thrived on structure, and the arena was no exception. The administration of sand raking was steeped in bureaucracy, with regulations that controlled every aspect of the process. 1. Raking schedule ** The sand was to be raked daily, ideally in the early morning hours to allow for proper drying. Failure to adhere to this schedule could result in reprimands for the assigned laborers. 2. Raking protocols ** Each rake had to be made of specific materials, typically wood with iron teeth for durability. The rake's width was standardized at 1.5 Roman feet to ensure uniformity in sand distribution. 3. Punishments * Workers who failed to maintain the proper depth of sand, ideally between 6 to 8 inches for optimal combat conditions, faced harsh penalties. This could range from a beating to a fine, or even worse, being forced to fight in the arena themselves. Talk about a tough job description. Hashtag roles and job descriptions. The sand raking operation required a detailed hierarchy, each role critical in ensuring the arena was ready for the next bloody spectacle. 1. The sand keeper, Custos Arenae. This individual was responsible for overseeing the maintenance of the arena floor. They coordinated laborers, enforced rules, and reported directly to the editor, the official in charge of the games. Think of them as the floor manager of a live show, except the stakes were life and death. 2. Rakers, Rackery. These were the laborers tasked with the actual raking of the sand. Typically slaves or lower-class citizens, they bore the brunt of physical labor. They were often chosen for their strength and agility. 3. Sand inspectors, Inspectors Arenae. A small but vital role, inspectors ensured the sand was at the correct depth and consistency. They wielded a wooden stick to measure depth and were known to be quite particular, like a sommelier for sand. 4. Suppliers, fournitures. These were merchants who supplied the sand and soil. They had to meet quality standards, or else they faced the wrath of the sand keeper. The suppliers often had to bribe their way into contracts, as the competition was fierce. Hashtag technical specs and inventories. The logistical side of sand maintenance was just as complex as the gladiatorial combats themselves. Detailed inventories and specifications guided the process. 1. Rake specifications *. Material * wood, typically oak, with iron teeth. Width * 1.5 Roman feet. Length * 3 Roman feet. Weight * approximately 15 Roman pounds. 2. Sand inventory *. Source * Tiber River and surrounding quarries. Annual requirement * approximately 200 tons of sand per arena. Delivery schedule * bi-weekly, with strict penalties for late deliveries. 3. Depth measurement tool * The depth of sand was frequently tested with a standardized stick, known as the measuring rod, Stipes Menturi, which was precisely marked at 6 and 8 inches. While some may chuckle at the thought of a stick being the arbiter of life and death, it was this very attention to detail that ensured the safety of gladiators, well, as safe as one could get while fighting for their life. Hashtag The Art of Raking, a cultural commentary. The act of raking sand was not merely a mechanical task, it became a subtle art form. The patterns left in the sand could influence the psychological state of the gladiators. A well-raked floor, with smooth lines and a consistent depth, could instill confidence in the fighters. Conversely, a haphazardly maintained surface could send them into a mental spiral. 1. Raking techniques * Rakers were trained in specific techniques to ensure the sand was evenly distributed. Circular motions were preferred in the center, while straight lines were used around the perimeter. 2. Cultural impact * The Romans even held competitions among rakers to see who could create the most aesthetically pleasing patterns. The winner would earn the right to a better ration of food for the week, because who wouldn't want to win a sand raking contest? Hashtag The downfall of sand raking protocols. As the Roman Empire began to decline in the 4th century AD, so too did the meticulous protocols surrounding sand maintenance. The shift in focus from grand gladiatorial displays to more extravagant games led to a decrease in the quality of arena maintenance. 1. Neglect * With less emphasis on the importance of a well-kept arena, raking protocols were often ignored. This led to uneven surfaces and increased injuries among gladiators, ironically turning the very thing meant to protect them into a weapon of chaos. 2. Bureaucratic collapse * As the bureaucratic structures crumbled, so did the enforcement of raking schedules and quality standards. The once proud role of the sand keeper became a mere shadow of its former self, with few willing to enforce the rules. 3. The last days of the arena * By the time the last gladiatorial games were held, the sand floors had become a mere afterthought. Fights were often held in dirt and mud, a far cry from the carefully maintained arenas of earlier centuries. Conclusion, a legacy of sand. While the grandeur of gladiatorial games may dominate our understanding of Roman culture, the history of their sand floor raking protocols reveals an underlying commitment to order, efficiency, and aesthetics. The meticulous attention to detail in this mundane task underscores the complexities of Roman society and its values. In retrospect, the sand rakers were the unsung heroes of the arena, ensuring that every clash of swords had a proper backdrop, a well-raked stage for the drama of life and death. So, next time you think of gladiators, don't forget to tip your hat to the custodians of the sand. After all, without them, the arena could have easily turned into a giant sandbox, and we all know how dangerous those can be. In the grand scheme of history, it's a reminder that even the smallest details can have a profound impact, especially when they involve life, death, and a good raking. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. The Roman Colosseum, a marvel of engineering and a monument to the empire's love for spectacle, was not merely a venue for gladiatorial games, but also a complex ecosystem of regulation, maintenance, and, believe it or not, sand raking. As the crowds roared and the gladiators clashed in mortal combat, behind the scenes, a less glamorous but equally important operation was taking place on the sand-strewn floor of the arena. This detailed history will dive into the construction methods, bureaucratic rules, roles, technical specifications, and inventory surrounding the protocols of sand floor raking in Roman amphitheaters. Construction methods and materials. The arena floor, often made of compacted sand, was no random patch of earth. From 70 AD onward, the Colosseum showcased an impressive design where the sand was a critical element. The Romans utilized a mix of fine and coarse sand, which was sourced from various locations, including the banks of the Tiber River and coastal areas. 1. Materials. Sand, the primary component, fine sand for cushioning and coarse for stability. Wooden rakes, crafted from local timbers, particularly oak or pine, to withstand the rigors of daily maintenance. Shovels, heavy-duty tools, often made from iron, for initial layering and reshaping. 2. Cost. The sand itself was relatively inexpensive, estimated at around 1 denarius per cubic meter. Rakes and shovels varied, costing between 5 to 15 denarii, depending on the quality of craftsmanship. 3. Construction timeline. Initial preparation of the arena floor was completed in a week, with maintenance raking occurring daily before events. Bureaucratic rules and punishments. With any large-scale operation in ancient Rome came a web of bureaucracy. The management of the sand floor was no exception. The protocols surrounding sand raking were strictly enforced to ensure safety and aesthetics. 1. Key regulations. Sand depth must be maintained at a minimum of 10 centimeters to prevent injuries. The sand must be raked in a specific pattern. Longitudinal lines were favored for both visual appeal and practicality. Any sand displaced from combat must be replaced within 24 hours. 2. Penalties. Failure to comply with sand maintenance could result in fines ranging from 5 to 20 denarii, depending on the severity of neglect. In extreme cases, the raking crew could face a public humiliation, forced to rake the arena floor in front of a jeering crowd, a fate worse than death for many. 3. Bureaucratic structure. The curator of the arena oversaw all operations, including sand management. Underneath the curator was a sand master, responsible for daily oversight, with a team of rakers beneath him. #### roles and job descriptions. In the grand hierarchy of the Colosseum, sand raking was a job that carried its own unique prestige, though not the kind that attracted the ladies, unless you had a penchant for gritty charm. 1. Curator of the arena, the top-tier overseer who would report directly to the emperor. Responsibilities included ensuring the overall safety of the arena and supervising events. Salary, 150 denarii/month. 2. Sand Master, second in command. The sand master was responsible for ensuring compliance with the raking protocols and maintaining the sand's quality. Salary, 75 denarii/month. 3. Rakers, a team of laborers tasked with the daily upkeep of the arena floor. Each raker had to be adept at both raking and shoveling. Salary, 30 denarii/month, plus the occasional thrill of working alongside gladiators. 4. Sand Auditors, a humorous title for those responsible for inspecting the sand after events. They ensured the quality and depth were within regulations, often leading to amusingly pedantic disputes over measurements. Salary, 40 denarii/month. #### Technical specs and inventories. The technical specifications of the sand raking equipment were as rigorous as the gladiatorial training regimens. Each tool had its own set of guidelines to ensure maximum efficiency. 1. Rake specifications. Length, 1.5 meters long. Width, 0.5 meters across the tines. Material, oak frame with iron tines for durability. Weight, approximately 5 kilograms. 2. Shovel specifications. Length, 1.2 meters. Blade width, 0.3 meters. Material, iron blade with a wooden handle. Weight, approximately 3 kilograms. 3. Daily inventory. 20 rakes. 15 shovels. 5 spare rakes, for emergencies, of course. One never knows when a particularly enthusiastic gladiator may wreak havoc on the sand. 4. Maintenance supplies. Replacement tines for rakes, 1 denarius each. Sand replenishment, due to displacement cost varied based on event intensity, typically 10 denarii for a full replacement pre-game. #### The ritual of raking. Raking was not merely a chore, it was a ritual, steeped in tradition. Each day, the rakers would arrive well before dawn, armed with their tools and a shared sense of duty. The rhythm of their work mirrored that of the gladiators preparing for battle. 1. Morning routine. The rakers would gather at the arena entrance, exchanging banter to lighten the mood. What do you call a gladiator who rakes sand? One would joke. A sandicator. 2. Technique. The raking pattern began longitudinally, creating a smooth surface for the gladiators. A final pass would be made across the entire arena to ensure consistency, a technique known as the final sweep, which could take up to an hour. 3. Quality control. After raking, the sand master would inspect the surface. Complaints from gladiators regarding uneven footing were taken seriously, often leading to immediate re-raking. ### The decline of sand raking protocols. By the late 4th century AD, as the Roman Empire began its slow decline, the once vital protocols of sand maintenance started to fall by the wayside. The Colosseum was still used for events, but with diminishing resources and a lack of skilled labor, the quality of sand maintenance suffered. 1. Reduced workforce. Many rakers left for better-paying jobs elsewhere, and the remaining crew often consisted of untrained volunteers. 2. Budget cuts. The emperor reduced the budget for arena maintenance, with sand raking becoming a low priority. Reports of uneven footing and chaotic conditions began to circulate. 3. Final days. By 476 AD, with the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the Colosseum would see its last gladiatorial games. The raking protocols were largely forgotten, becoming a mere footnote in the larger narrative of Rome's decline. ### Conclusion. The history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols may not be the most exhilarating topic in the annals of Roman history, but it underscores the intricate web of civilization that sustained the empire's grand spectacles. From construction methods to bureaucratic regulations, the protocols reveal a stark contrast between the glamorous facade of bloody combat and the drab, often overlooked details that made it all possible. Perhaps the final laugh is on us. While we remember the gladiators, the emperors, and the loud cheers of the crowd, it was the humble rakers who ensured that the arena floor was ready for the drama to unfold. So, next time you think of gladiators, spare a thought for the unsung heroes of the sand, those who raked their way through history, one grain at a time. ### The Drab History of Roman Gladiator Sand Floor Raking Protocols. Introduction. The grandeur of Rome, with its soaring columns and bustling forums, often overshadows the less glamorous, yet equally intricate, details of daily life in the Colosseum. Chief among these mundane mysteries is the meticulous protocol surrounding the raking of sand on the arena floor, a task as crucial as it was drab. This history, often overlooked, reveals a complex web of construction methods, bureaucratic rules, roles, and technical specifications that ensured the arena was primed for both spectacle and slaughter. ### Construction methods and materials. The arena of the Colosseum, completed in AD 80, was a marvel of engineering. Its floor was not merely a flat expanse but rather a carefully designed layer of sand, chosen for its ability to absorb blood, cushion falls, and, most importantly, provide a visually striking backdrop for the violent spectacles that captivated Roman citizens. 1. Materials used ***. Sand *** the primary material, transported from nearby quarries. It was coarse and gritty, providing excellent drainage and cushioning. Clay base * underneath the sand. A layer of compacted clay ensured stability and prevented the sand from shifting excessively. Straw and small stones * occasionally mixed into the sand to enhance absorption and create a more textured surface. 2. Construction costs *. Initial estimates for constructing the arena floor hovered around 100,000 sesterces. This included the cost of labor, materials, and the occasional bribe to ensure speedy delivery of quality sand. Annual maintenance, primarily for sand replacement, averaged about 5,000 sesterces, a pittance compared to the financial windfall from ticket sales. Bureaucratic rules and punishments. The raking of the sand was not left to chance. It was governed by a set of stringent rules established by the editor, the official in charge of the games. These rules often reflected the broader bureaucracy of the Roman Empire. 1. Bureaucratic framework *. The editor's mandate, AD 15. This document outlined the standards for sand depth, raking angles, and cleanliness, ensuring that each session was as visually and physically enticing as possible. Inspection protocols * A team of spectators, or arena inspectors, was tasked with monitoring compliance. They conducted inspections before each event, wielding their authority like a toga-clad sword. 2. Punishments for non-compliance *. Failure to comply with the raking protocols could result in severe fines, up to 1,000 sesterces for neglecting depth specifications or improper raking techniques. More serious infractions, such as allowing blood to pool on the surface, could lead to public humiliation or even banishment from the arena, which, let's be honest, was worse than a gladiator's fate. Roles and job descriptions. The task of maintaining the arena sand fell to a specialized group of individuals, each with their own responsibilities. 1. Position titles *. Sand overseer, AD 50. The primary individual responsible for the quality and maintenance of the sand. This person was typically a retired gladiator or a seasoned laborer who had accumulated enough street cred to wield a rake with authority. Rakers * A team of laborers, typically slaves or lower-class citizens, tasked with the actual raking. They were often known as the sand soldiers, a title that inspired both laughter and derision. Quality inspectors * A cadre of officials who ensured that both the sand's texture and depth met the required standards. Their motto: if you can't rake it right, don't rake it at all. 2. Daily duties *. Morning inspections of the sand, ensuring it was free from debris and animal remains. Raking the sand to a depth of 10 to 15 centimeters, with a gentle slope toward the center to facilitate drainage. Regular coordination meetings with the editor to ensure compliance with changing game formats and expectations. Technical specs and inventories. Technical specifications for the arena sand were remarkably detailed, reflecting the Romans' obsession with order. 1. Standard measurements *. Depth * required to be between 10 to 15 centimeters, depending on the type of combat taking place, more depth for animal fights, less for gladiatorial duels. Rake specifications *. Each raker was issued a standardized wooden rake, 2 meters in length, with a 30 cm wide head featuring tines spaced 5 cm apart. This ensured uniformity in the raking process. 2. Inventory management *. Each arena had a dedicated storage area for sand, typically a stone shed adjacent to the Colosseum. The inventory list included sand stock * approximately 50 tons of sand available at any time. Rakes * a minimum of 20 rakes, regularly inspected for wear. Shovels and buckets * for transporting sand, quantity varied depending on the season and anticipated events. ### The role of innovation. In the year 65 AD, an ambitious sand overseer, Quintus Maximus, introduced a new raking technique that would revolutionize the process. Dubbed the Maximus method, it involved a two-step raking process that first leveled the sand before creating the necessary contours. 1. Impact of innovation *. This method reduced the time spent raking by 30%, allowing for more time to prepare for the actual events. As a result, Quintus earned the favor of the editor, leading to a promotion and, eventually, a lavish banquet in his honor, complete with sand-themed delicacies. Who knew sand could be so rewarding? 2. Adoption of the method *. By AD 70, the Maximus method had become the standard, with rakers across the empire adopting it, much to the chagrin of traditionalists who believed that the old ways were the best ways. ####. Conclusion. The history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols is one of unexpected complexity and surprising significance. From the construction of the arena floor to the intricate bureaucratic rules governing sand maintenance, it reveals a society deeply committed to spectacle and order. While the tales of gladiators battling to the death often overshadow these details, it is essential to recognize the unsung heroes of the sand, the rakers and overseers, who ensured that the arena was always ready for the next thrilling encounter. In the end, while gladiators carved their names into history with blood and valor, it was the meticulously raked sand beneath their feet that provided the stage for their legendary exploits. As we reflect on their stories, let us not forget the humble sand and those who tended to it, for without their steadfast dedication, the gladiatorial games would have been a far messier affair, or worse yet, a real sand trap. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. In the grand amphitheaters of Rome, where the roar of the crowd met the clash of steel, the backdrop was often overlooked, the meticulously raked sand floors. While gladiators battled for glory, their arena was a canvas carefully prepared by a cadre of unsung heroes, the rakers. This history, though drab in name, is rich with detail and bureaucracy, revealing the often overlooked intricacies of Roman entertainment. ##### Construction methods and materials. The foundation of any good arena was its sand floor, and the Romans were nothing if not resourceful. The sand used in these grand venues was not just any sand, it was a carefully selected blend of fine grains, often sourced from the banks of the Tiber or other nearby rivers. The Romans favored a mix that included 1. Silica sand, the primary material, known for its durability and ability to withstand the weight of charging gladiators. 2. Silt, added for moisture retention, ensuring the sand did not become a dusty hazard during the blood-soaked contests. 3. Clay, a small percentage was mixed in to help bind the sand, providing a stable surface for combatants to maneuver. Costs of construction. The cost of constructing an arena with a proper sand floor varied greatly depending on location and size. For example, the Colosseum, with its sprawling 287 feet in diameter, required an estimated 20,000 tons of sand, an investment that would have cost around 1 million denarii, approximately $50,000 today, just for the sand alone. This figure did not include labor costs, which involved skilled rakers and overseers who ensured the arena was battle-ready. Bureaucratic rules and punishments. In the Roman Empire, even the act of raking sand was governed by a set of strict regulations. The Lex Gladiatoria outlined the do's and don'ts of arena maintenance. For instance, 1. Rake width. Rakes had to be precisely 2 feet wide to ensure uniformity in the sand layer. 2. Depth of raking. The sand could be no more than 6 inches deep, for both aesthetic and safety reasons. 3. Frequency of raking. The arena floor had to be raked at least 3 times a day, before morning events, right after noon, and just before the evening shows. Punishments for non-compliance were severe. A raker caught neglecting their duties could face fines, public humiliation, or, in extreme cases, a mock execution in the very arena they were meant to maintain. After all, nothing says, "We take our gladiatorial games seriously," like a raker being tossed to a hungry lion for a little motivation. Roles and job descriptions. The dusty task of raking sand was not just a mindless chore, it was a role filled with specific responsibilities and hierarchy. The key positions included: 1. Magister Arenae, the chief overseer of the arena, responsible for all aspects of maintenance, including sand raking. This individual wielded considerable power, often making decisions that affected the day-to-day operations of the games. 2. Rakers, runcators, the laborers who physically raked the sand. These individuals were often former gladiators or slaves who had demonstrated a knack for arena maintenance. Their job was to ensure the sand was evenly distributed and free from debris. 3. Assistants, ministeri. These junior rakers helped the main rakers, carrying tools and ensuring that the arena was stocked with fresh sand. They were often the ones who felt the brunt of the magister's ire if the raking did not meet standards. 4. Sand inspectors, a position that sounds more prestigious than it was. These individuals were responsible for quality control. The inspectors would check for proper raking depth, sand composition, and cleanliness. A bad report could lead to a raker being sent out for further training, a euphemism for a day of hard labor. Technical specs and inventories. The Romans were meticulous record keepers, and the sand raking protocols were no exception. Records from the 1st century AD show that each arena maintained an inventory of tools and supplies. Rakes, 50 standard rakes, each measuring 2 feet wide. Brooms, 20 specialized brooms for cleaning up debris and ensuring the sand was pristine. Shovels, 30 shovels used for transporting sand from storage areas to the arena. Sand stockpiles, each arena had designated stockpiles of sand, with an average of 5,000 tons on hand for quick replenishment. ####Notable events and sand adjustments. Throughout history, specific events led to changes in sand raking protocols. For instance, during the infamous Munera Gladiatoria in 80 AD, Domitian ordered a complete overhaul of the raking process. The rationale? To prevent any unsightly sand disturbances from affecting the view of the spectators. This included banning of sand spinners, a whimsical practice where rakers would spin their rakes in a show of flair, leading to uneven sand distribution. Introduction of high-precision rakes. These featured adjustable widths, allowing rakers to customize their approach depending on the type of event. ###The evolution of the raking protocols. As the empire expanded, so too did the complexity of the raking protocols. By the 2nd century AD, the introduction of gladiatorial spectacles that featured exotic animals necessitated a change in sand management. The new protocols included 1. Animal control features. The sand was raked in specific patterns to create barriers that would contain wild animals. This was particularly important for events featuring elephants and lions, as an uncontained beast could wreak havoc on a well-raked floor and the spectators alike. 2. Moisture management. To combat the dust clouds created by large crowds, rakers began to add water to the sand, leading to the infamous muddy floor debacle of 150 AD, where gladiators found themselves slipping and sliding instead of fighting. ###Witty aside, the Raking Olympics. One could argue that raking should have been an Olympic sport given the level of skill and precision exhibited by the rakers. And here comes Marcus, with an impeccable 8.5 rake score. Look at that sand fly. ###The final years and legacy. As the Western Roman Empire fell, so too did the standards of raking fade into history. However, the legacy of the raking protocols would continue to influence arena management long after the gladiators' swords were sheathed. The Byzantine arenas adopted many of the Roman protocols, ensuring that the sand remained a key aspect of public spectacles. ###Conclusion. The history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols may seem drab, but it reveals a world of meticulous planning, strict regulations, and colorful characters. The humble rakers, often forgotten in the shadows of the Colosseum, played a crucial role in the blood-soaked dramas that captivated the ancient world. So, the next time you think of gladiators, remember the sand beneath their feet, raked to perfection. It was the silent witness to history's most thrilling battles. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. When we think of ancient Rome, our minds might wander to grand arenas, valiant gladiators, and the thunderous applause of an audience hungry for bloodshed. Yet, Lurking beneath the glamour of Roman spectacle is a drab history that is anything but glorious, the meticulous and often tedious world of sand floor raking protocols in the Colosseums. Yes, that's right. The sand beneath those blood-soaked feet didn't just magically appear. It was the product of bureaucratic red tape, laws, and a distinctly Roman obsession with order. Hashtag regional variations over time. To begin with, let's talk about regional variations. It turns out that sand management was not a one-size-fits-all affair. Depending on the region, the type of sand used varied greatly. In Rome, the prized sand was a fine, golden grain sourced from the banks of the Tiber River, while in North Africa, gladiator schools would often utilize a coarser, darker sand, which, while less aesthetically pleasing, had the advantage of better absorbing blood, and possibly saving on cleaning costs. The distinctions didn't stop at the color and texture. Different regions had varying standards for depth. Some arenas were known for their shallow pits, which allowed for quicker raking, while others favored a deeper sand bed that would swallow the evidence of less than glorious fights. It was like a regional rivalry, only instead of sports teams, it was all about which arena could keep their sand pits in the best shape for public entertainment. Hashtag laws, edicts, taxes, and ledgers. But how does one manage the sand of such glorious arenas? Enter the Roman legal system, which, like an overzealous parent with a checklist, had regulations governing every aspect of gladiatorial combat, including the sand. Various laws and edicts dictated the type of sand that could be used, who was responsible for its upkeep, and how often it had to be raked. A notable edict from Emperor Augustus mandated that sand must be raked daily, lest it become littered with residual remnants of past battles. Taxes were another fun layer of bureaucracy. Yes, gladiators might have fought for their lives, but the sand itself was also part of an intricate tax system. Arena owners were required to pay a sand tax based on the volume of sand used. This led to a black market for sand, where unscrupulous suppliers would mix in dirt to inflate the weight and thus the tax owed. Imagine the conversations among senators. I say, what do we do about the sand tax dodgers? Well, perhaps a committee should be formed. Nothing screams excitement quite like a committee on sand taxation. Ledgers became the lifeblood of arena management. The meticulous record-keeping of sand raking schedules, the quality of sand, and even the number of combatants who met their end in the pit became paramount. These documents were often more detailed than many modern-day accounting records. Each arena had a sand raking officer, yes, that was an actual title, who was tasked with ensuring compliance with sand-related laws. These officers were the unsung heroes of the arena, working tirelessly to ensure that the sand was not only raked but raked to perfection. Hashtag logistics and supply chains. And speaking of officers, let's dive into the logistics and supply chains involved. Imagine being the poor sap responsible for sourcing sand in the vast Roman Empire. The logistics of transporting sand from one location to another were a logistical nightmare. Roads were not always paved, and transporting bulk materials like sand was an exercise in frustration. By the time the sand reached the arena, it was often a mixture of dirt, stones, and the occasional lost sandal. To combat this, a network of sand suppliers emerged. These suppliers formed alliances with local gladiator schools and arena owners, creating a web of contracts and agreements. "I'll supply you with the finest sand from the Tiber if you promise to call my arena the Sandy Colosseum in your promotional materials." Such was the nature of Roman commerce. In a particularly amusing anecdote, a group of suppliers once attempted to form a union, the Sand Workers of Rome. They demanded higher wages for their back-breaking work and threatened to go on strike. The idea of an arena without sand sent shockwaves through the political elite. Imagine the panic. What will the people do without their bloody entertainment? We simply cannot have a day without gladiators. They were eventually placated with a small tax break, and the union dissipated before it could ever get off the ground, much like the dreams of many a gladiator. #### record keeping with lots of specifics. As we move on to the record-keeping aspect, we must acknowledge the sheer volume of data generated by the sand floor raking protocols. Each arena maintained a sand ledger, a meticulous book that documented everything from the type and source of sand to the raking schedules and the various incidents that occurred during combat. A particularly detailed entry might read, "On the 12th of March, year of our Lord 52, a total of 15 tons of Tiber sand was delivered. Raked by Marcus Flavius, who reported a slippage incident due to uneven raking technique. Adjustments were made to the raking protocol henceforth." The sand ledger was not just a record, it was a historical document. Future generations would look back and wonder why it mattered so much. But to the Romans, it was the foundation of their entire entertainment industry. If the sand wasn't raked properly, it could lead to injuries, or worse, a poorly executed spectacle that left the audience clamoring for more blood. The horror. ###one surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. And now, for the piece de resistance, the surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote that underscores just how far the Romans would go to maintain their beloved sand-raking protocols. One fateful day, as the sand-raking officer was inspecting the arena, he stumbled upon a rather large and unfortunate problem. An entire cache of sand had been contaminated by a particularly unfortunate incident involving a herd of goats that had wandered into the arena overnight. Rather than dispose of the contaminated sand, the officer, in an act of desperation, ordered the raking to commence. The sand was raked, goat droppings and all. Legend has it that the next day's fight featured a gladiator who slipped on this very sand, leading to a very public and embarrassing defeat. The audience roared with laughter, and the gladiator, forever branded as the goat, was forced to fight with a goat's head as his helmet in subsequent matches. From that day forward, every sand-raking officer was cautioned to ensure that no goats, or any stray animals for that matter, could access the arena overnight. And so we see how even the most mundane aspects of the Roman gladiatorial experience could take a turn for the grotesque, thanks to the drab history of sand floor raking protocols. ###conclusion. In conclusion, The world of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols is a fascinatingly dull yet utterly essential part of ancient history. From regional variations and legal edicts to the logistics of supply chains and the meticulousness of record-keeping, the management of sand was a veritable soap opera of bureaucracy. And let us not forget the goats that turned a mundane task into a significant historical moment. As we look back on this drab history, we can appreciate the lengths to which the Romans went to ensure their gladiators had a proper arena to battle in. So next time you find yourself at a sports event, spare a thought for the unsung heroes of sand raking, and remember, behind every great fight, there's a very, very boring history of sand management. ### The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. The Roman Empire, a glorious civilization known for its conquests, architecture, and, of course, that delightful blood sport known as gladiatorial combat. We often envision the grandeur of the Colosseum, the roar of the crowd, and the spectacle of men, and occasionally women, fighting for their lives against ferocious beasts or each other. But let us not forget the unsung hero of the arena, the humble sand floor, meticulously raked to provide just the right amount of traction for gladiators in their death-defying dance of doom. Yes, my friends, today we delve into the drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. Grab your togas, this is going to get gritty. ### regional variations over time. Picture it, the year is 100 AD, and gladiatorial games are sweeping the empire like a viral TikTok dance. But wait! Not all sand is created equal. Regional variations in sand quality and texture meant that raking protocols differed from one locale to another. In Rome, the sand was finely sifted to prevent any embarrassing slips that could lead to a fatal faux pas. Meanwhile, in provinces like Gaul, the sand was often coarser, leading to a more treacherous footing. It was not uncommon for a gladiator to find themselves face first in a patch of less than ideal gritty terrain, muttering curses in Latin that would make a sailor blush. By the time we reached the 3rd century AD, the art of sand raking had evolved. The gladiatorial arenas in the provinces began to adopt more sophisticated techniques. Enter the use of rakes with varying tines, short for the pre-game aesthetic and long for the dramatic mid-fight adjustments. Arena managers often consulted with local sand experts, yes, they existed, to ascertain the optimal rake depth depending on the humidity, temperature, and, most importantly, the likelihood of a gladiator's impending demise. ### laws, edicts, taxes, and ledgers. Now, you might assume that the practicalities of sand raking would remain beneath the bureaucratic radar. But you underestimate the Romans. As with everything in this grand empire, sand raking protocols were subject to an intricate web of laws and edicts. The emperor himself, in a rare moment of boredom, once declared that all gladiatorial arenas must adhere to a standardized sand protocol, lest they face severe penalties. Consider the infamous Lex Arena, which mandated that all raked sand must be a minimum of 12 inches deep to ensure proper cushioning for the gladiators. This law was enacted after a particularly disastrous match where an overzealous gladiator slipped on poorly raked sand and inadvertently performed a rather impressive breakdance move, one that ended with a swift and regrettable exit from the mortal coil. The public outcry was swift, and the Senate, in its infinite wisdom, decided that no gladiator should die due to poor flooring. And then there were taxes. Yes, you heard that right. The sand tax was a thing. Arena owners had to pay a hefty fee based on the quality and quantity of sand used in their arenas. The more pristine the sand, the higher the tax. This led to some rather creative accounting. Arena managers would often resort to using pseudonyms for sand suppliers in their ledgers, leading to amusingly convoluted names like Sandy McSandface or Dusty Bottoms. Hashtag logistics and supply chains. Let's talk logistics, shall we? The sand didn't just magically appear in the arena, you know. Transporting the right sand from quarries to arenas required an intricate supply chain that would make modern logistics managers weep with envy. Sand harvesters, known colloquially as sand wranglers, would toil away, sifting and transporting sand, often over long distances, to ensure that it arrived at the arena in pristine condition. To keep the sand supply flowing smoothly, arena managers often employed a network of local sand wranglers who understood the nuances of the terrain better than they understood their own families. These wranglers would deliver sand via horse-drawn carts or, in some cases, on the backs of hapless slaves, who surely had more than a few complaints regarding their career choices. The sand itself was typically sourced from riverbeds or coastal areas, but some ambitious arenas even experimented with volcanic ash for that extra kick. While it did offer a unique texture, it also came with a side order of respiratory issues for the gladiators. After all, who doesn't want to choke while fighting for their life? Hashtag record keeping with specifics. Record keeping, the unsung hero of the empire. Gladiatorial arenas maintained meticulous records of all things sand-related. Arena managers would jot down the type of sand, its origin, and the date it was raked in a leather-bound ledger. These records were essential for evaluating the performance of gladiators and ensuring that no one was unfairly hindered by subpar flooring. One particular entry from the arena in Pompeii reads, June 15, 79 AD, raked using a short-tined rake, 14 inches deep. Sand sourced from the river Sarno. Gladiator Gaius slipped and fell during match against Tiberius. Will investigate sand quality. This level of detail was not merely for show, it served as a record for future matches and potential disputes over gladiatorial performance. After all, who would want to be known as the gladiator who lost because of a sandy misstep? Hashtag a surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, as we wade deeper into this sandy quagmire, let me regale you with a rather grotesque anecdote that has become the stuff of legend among historians and sand aficionados alike. It involves one particularly infamous gladiator known as Maximus the Not-So-Magnificent. Maximus had a notorious reputation for his over-the-top performances, which included a flair for the dramatic, often involving acrobatics that would make a Cirque du Soleil performer green with envy. During one fateful match, Maximus decided to incorporate a particularly daring leap over his opponent, only to miscalculate the landing. Instead of a graceful descent onto the raked sand, he splattered face first into a mound of sand that had been improperly raked that day. The crowd gasped, but not before bursting into uncontrollable laughter when they realized that what Maximus had landed in was not just sand, but a large pile of sand mixed with the remains of previous battles. Let's just say, gladiators didn't always have the courtesy to clean up after themselves. What followed was a bizarre spectacle. As Maximus attempted to rise, he inadvertently flung sand, and bits of ancient gladiator remains, into the faces of the spectators, leading to a chaotic scene of laughter, disgust, and utter pandemonium. The incident became known as the Sandy Surprise, and Maximus, despite, or perhaps because of, his misfortune, became an instant legend. His career continued to flourish, and he even went on to host a series of gladiator-themed cooking shows that incorporated the phrase, "a pinch of sand," for flavor. Conclusion. So there you have it, dear readers, the drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols, replete with regional variations, laws, taxes, logistics, and a rather grotesque anecdote. The next time you watch a gladiatorial film or read about Rome's infamous contests, take a moment to appreciate the unsung laborers behind the scenes, the sand wranglers, the arena managers, and yes, even the rakers who ensured that the floors were as deadly as the combatants themselves. In the grand tapestry of history, it's easy to overlook the mundane details that made the extraordinary possible. But sometimes, it's the drab, the gritty, and the downright absurd that truly captures the essence of what it meant to be a gladiator in ancient Rome. So, raise your goblet of wine and toast to the sand, may it forever remain raked and ready for battle. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. Ah, the Roman Empire. A sprawling behemoth of cultural grandeur, military might, and a penchant for spectacles that would make even the most jaded modern-day reality TV producer blush. At its heart lay the colossal amphitheaters where gladiators fought to the roar of the crowd, their lives hanging by a thread as they battled beasts, each other, and sometimes even the occasional overzealous emperor. Yet, behind the glamour of swordplay and bloodshed lay an unsung hero of the arena, the humble sand floor, meticulously raked to perfection. Yes, dear reader, let us delve into the drab yet surprisingly complex world of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. Regional variations over time. While one might assume that raking sand is a universal affair, much like breathing or grumbling about taxes, Roman gladiatorial arenas showcased a shocking variety of raking techniques, influenced by regional customs and the whims of local officials. In Rome, the raking was often a ritualistic affair, with the sand being groomed into intricate patterns resembling the waves of the Tiber River. Meanwhile, in Gaul, rakers took a more pragmatic approach, flattening the sand to minimize the risk of tripping over the corpses of fallen combatants. By the time you reached the far reaches of the empire, such as in the sandy deserts of North Africa, the raking protocols morphed yet again. Here, the sand was left loose and uneven, with the rationale being that it would add an element of surprise for the gladiators. After all, nothing spices up a spectacle quite like the threat of a misplaced foot leading to a tumble into the jaws of a lurking lion. ##### laws, edicts, taxes, ledgers. Of course, where there are gladiators, there are also laws, taxes, and a whole library's worth of bureaucratic nonsense. During the reign of Emperor Augustus, a series of edicts was put in place to standardize the raking procedures across the empire. The edicts mandated that the sand must be at least 6 inches deep, making it a prime spot for unwanted debris and the occasional lost sandal. And let's not overlook the tax implications. Each arena was assessed a sand maintenance tax, a well-intentioned but often mismanaged levy that required local governors to keep records of their sand supplies. Poorly maintained ledgers could lead to severe penalties, including a public flogging, or worse, being forced to attend a week-long series of gladiatorial matches while seated next to a particularly boisterous patron with a fondness for shouting unsolicited advice. In the grand scheme of things, the raking of sand was not just about aesthetics, it was a matter of civic duty. The records of sand raking became an essential part of the local economy, with detailed logs documenting everything from sand quality to the number of gladiators who had met their doom on a particularly treacherous patch. These ledgers, however, were often riddled with discrepancies. A highly disputed entry from the year 49 BC, for example, suggested that a gladiator named Marcus Flavius had not only survived 3 bouts but had also taken it upon himself to rake the sand in between fights. The audacity! #### logistics and supply chains. Maintaining the sand floor was a logistical nightmare. One could even argue that the Romans invented the concept of supply chain management, albeit with a bit more bloodshed and a lot less efficiency. Sand was quarried from various regions, with the finest grains coming from the shores of the Mediterranean. However, transporting sand was no simple task. It involved a series of laborious routes, laden with challenges that could rival the trials of Hercules. Local sand suppliers often engaged in cutthroat competition, which led to the emergence of peculiar practices such as sand bribery. Vendors would pay off arena officials to favor their sand, claiming it was blessed by Neptune himself. In reality, it was often just the same gritty substance mixed with a sprinkle of marketing flair. The logistics of sand delivery also required skilled labor. Teams of workers known as sandarum, not to be confused with the charmingly inept sandwich makers, were responsible for transporting the sand to the arenas. They would load up their mule-drawn carts, navigating the treacherous Roman roads while dodging potholes, bandits, and the occasional angry mob. Once they reached the arena, the sand had to be spread evenly, a task often assigned to the lowest-ranking gladiators, those who had yet to prove their worth in the ring. #### record keeping with lots of specifics. Now, let's talk about record keeping, which was as vital to the Roman Empire as finding a good toga tailor. Each arena employed a sand keeper, a title that might sound glamorous but was less about prestige and more about being in charge of a giant box of dirt. The sand keeper was responsible for maintaining meticulous records of sand quality, depth, and even the number of times it had been raked in a given month. One particularly famous sand keeper, Lucius Tiberius, became legendary for his obsessive record-keeping. It was said that he once created a spreadsheet documenting every grain of sand that had been raked during his tenure. Legend has it that he would often whisper sweet nothings to the sand, believing it helped maintain its fine texture. His records included entries such as, Day 42, raked to a depth of 7 inches, one small pebble removed, Gladiator tripped on it, hilarity ensued. In addition, the sand keepers were tasked with monitoring the cleanliness of the sand. They had to ensure that no debris, be it a rogue spear, a piece of armor, or the remains of an overly ambitious snack, interfered with the gladiatorial games. The records would detail the frequency of debris removal, often leading to heated debates among the officials. You call that a clean sand floor? I've seen cleaner floors in the public latrines. One surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, as promised, we reach the climax of our journey through the drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols with a surprise twist, an anecdote that is both surprising and, dare I say, borderline grotesque. In the year 32 AD, a particularly infamous gladiatorial match took place in the Colosseum, featuring a new breed of gladiator known as the sand wraith. This gladiator, clad in tattered rags and rumored to be cursed, had a penchant for theatrics. He would swirl around the arena, kicking up clouds of sand as he fought, creating a spectacle that mesmerized the audience. However, it was not his fighting skills that would go down in history. One fateful day, as the sand wraith fought his opponent, a notorious beast tamer named Quintus, a bizarre incident occurred. In the midst of a dramatic duel, the wraith stumbled, falling face first into a freshly raked patch of sand. As he did so, a rogue wild boar, which had somehow escaped its pen, charged into the arena, mistaking the wraith for a pile of refuse. The audience gasped, the spectators screamed, and the local sand keeper fainted, clutching his records to his chest as if they were a sacred scroll. In an unexpected twist of fate, the sand wraith managed to rise, covered in sand, and with an uncanny resemblance to a human sandcastle. The boar, confused but intrigued, sniffed around, ultimately deciding that the sand wraith was not, in fact, a pile of garbage but a worthy opponent. The ensuing battle between the two became a legend in its own right, with the boar ultimately winning the day. The aftermath? A new protocol was instituted. All arenas were to be checked for rogue animals before matches, and the sand was to be raked with an eye for errant livestock. Conclusion. So there you have it, the drab yet surprisingly intricate world of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. From the regional variations that spanned the empire to the absurdities of record-keeping and the logistics of sand supply chains, it's a story that reminds us that even the most mundane aspects of history can be rife with intrigue, humor, and a touch of the grotesque. Next time you find yourself in a dusty arena, remember, beneath the blood and the glory lies a world of meticulously raked sand, waiting to tell its own story. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. Ah, the Roman gladiators, the original reality stars. These muscle-bound marvels, with their flashy armor and dramatic entrances, fought for glory, fame, and the occasional thumbs up from the emperor. But behind the scenes of this blood-soaked spectacle lay a mundane yet crucial aspect of their arena, the sand floor. And not just any sand, mind you, but meticulously raked sand, the unsung hero that ensured both a fair fight and a relatively clean stage upon which to enact acts of brutal valor. Now, you may be wondering, how riveting can a history of sand floor raking be? Well, strap in, dear reader, because we're about to embark on a journey through the drab yet fascinating world of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols, complete with regional variations, laws, taxes, and a smattering of grotesque anecdotes that will make you squirm in your seat. Regional variations over time. Rome was not just a city, it was a sprawling empire that encompassed diverse cultures, climates, and, yes, sand types. Like any good bureaucrat, the Romans loved to optimize. Different regions developed their own raking techniques based on local soil compositions and the types of gladiatorial contests being held. In the sun-baked deserts of North Africa, for instance, the sand was fine and powdery, perfect for a dramatic kick-up during a particularly fierce gladiatorial bout. Meanwhile, in the damp, marshy regions of Gaul, the sand was heavier, requiring a more aggressive raking technique to keep it from clumping. And let's not forget about the importance of aesthetics. A well-raked sand floor was the stage upon which legends were born. Each arena had its own style guide. The Colosseum, for example, favored a symmetrical pattern that emphasized the grandeur of the spectacle. In contrast, smaller provincial arenas might opt for a more haphazard approach, reflecting local flair, or perhaps a lack of funds for proper raking implements. As gladiatorial games became increasingly popular, variations in sand management proliferated. Some clever arena managers even experimented with different types of sand to enhance the overall experience. Colored sands, for instance, were a fleeting fad. Who wouldn't want to see a battle fought on a floor of blue sand? But alas, the novelty wore off as quickly as it came, and the traditional tan sand reclaimed its rightful place in the hearts of the audience and the rakers alike. Laws, edicts, taxes, and ledgers. But what's a good gladiatorial sand floor without a labyrinth of laws and regulations to govern its upkeep? The Roman government, ever keen on controlling every aspect of life, even the sand, devised a series of edicts outlining exactly how the floors of the arenas should be maintained. One particularly riveting law, known as the Lex Arenae, mandated that sand must be raked daily in all public arenas. This edict was primarily to ensure that no gladiator might slip on an errant clump of sand and embarrass themselves in front of a crowd that could turn on them faster than a Roman senator at a scandal. Failure to comply with this law could result in significant fines, which, let's be honest, was probably the last thing an already overworked arena manager wanted on their plate. Taxes were another fun and invigorating aspect of this sand-sweeping saga. Enter the sand tax, a rather burdensome levy imposed by the Senate. This tax required arena owners to pay a fee based on the quality and quantity of sand used in their arenas. Naturally, this led to all sorts of shenanigans, including the infamous sand smuggling scandal of 33 BC, where unscrupulous arena managers would attempt to pass off inferior sand as the premium stuff to dodge hefty taxes. The scandal culminated in a dramatic Senate hearing that had all of Rome buzzing. And then there were the ledgers. Oh, the ledgers. These meticulously kept records tracked everything from the type of sand used to the number of times it had been raked, making them the most boring reading material ever devised. The ledger entries could be comically specific. September 12, 51 AD, raked the sand into a 45-degree angle pattern, added a touch of crushed seashell for texture. Gladiator Vero slipped during warm-up, no injuries reported. Truly, the stuff of legends. Logistics and supply chains. Now, let's talk logistics. You might think that sand is easy enough to come by, but not in the grand, bureaucratic world of Rome. Sand procurement was a full-time job, and the supply chain was nothing short of a Roman marvel. You see, the best sand for arenas was not just lying around in any old quarry. It had to be excavated, transported, and delivered to the arenas, often in large quantities. Enter the sand transporters, who were the unsung heroes of the gladiatorial world. They faced numerous challenges, from navigating treacherous mountain passes laden with rocks to dealing with the ever-present threat of bandits eager to intercept a caravan hauling golden grains of sand. Once the sand reached the arena, a dedicated team of rakers, often slaves or lower-class citizens hoping to earn a few denarii, would take over. Their job was to create the perfect fighting surface, which required not just physical labor but also a keen eye for detail. Every grain mattered, and a poorly raked floor could lead to slips, trips, and potentially fatal falls. Interestingly, the logistics of sand management also led to a sort of underground economy. Some clever entrepreneurs discovered that they could sell the used sand that had absorbed the blood of fallen gladiators, at a premium. This so-called blood sand was thought to enhance the valor of any future contests held on it. It became a quirky, albeit morbid, trend, and one that would have made any modern-day event planner shudder. Record keeping with lots of specifics. Ah, record keeping, the backbone of any well-oiled Roman machine. The meticulous records kept by arena managers documented everything from the daily raking schedule to the types of sand used and the outcomes of various gladiatorial matches. These records were often inscribed on wax tablets or written in ledgers, often in Latin, of course, because what's a bureaucracy without a complicated language? For example, one record from the year 69 AD reads, October 5th, raked sand in circular pattern, utilized 500 pounds of high-quality volcanic ash mixed with fine sand. Gladiators fought valiantly, outcome, Maximus versus Cassius, Maximus victorious via dramatic headlock. Let's not kid ourselves, these records were a treasure trove of dullness. They detailed every possible aspect of sand management, including how many rakes were used and how many slaves were assigned to the task. One particularly dry entry from a ledger lists, number of rakes mislaid, 3, number of rakes repaired, 1, number of rakes stolen by local children, 5. The meticulousness of this record-keeping led to some truly bizarre entries. One arena manager, clearly bored out of their mind, even took it upon themselves to track sand quality on a scale of 1 to 10. Spoiler alert, the sand never rated higher than a 7. One surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, all of this brings us to the piece de resistance, a rather grotesque anecdote that will surely stick with you long after you put down this enlightening piece on gladiatorial sand management. During the reign of Emperor Nero, a particularly ambitious arena manager decided to spice things up by introducing a new form of entertainment known as sand gladiator racing. Yes, you heard that right. The concept was simple. Gladiators would race across the arena on foot, their every step cushioned by freshly raked sand. Sounds fun, right? However, the execution was less than stellar. In what can only be described as a tragicomic turn of events, one brave gladiator lost his footing during a particularly dramatic maneuver, stumbled into the stands, and knocked over a vendor selling Nero's special sand-infused sausages. The sausages, infamous for their questionable meat quality, went flying, leading to a chaotic scene where spectators were pelted with both sand and dubious food. The aftermath? A slippery arena floor, an avalanche of angry patrons, and a legion of disgruntled sausage vendors. The incident made headlines throughout Rome, and the term sausage slip became a euphemism for any catastrophic event involving poor footing. So there you have it, an ode to the gladiator sand floor, where regional variations, laws, taxes, and logistics intersected in a world of thrilling combat and near-comical bureaucracy. From record-keeping that would bore even the most diligent accountant to the astonishing absurdity of gladiator racing gone awry, the history of sand-raking protocols is a testament to the oddities of Roman life. Who knew that beneath the blood and glory lay a world of drudgery and sand? Next time you watch a gladiatorial epic, spare a thought for the rakers, the unsung heroes of the arena, and their endless battle against clumpy sand. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. Ah, the Roman Empire. A vast expanse of breathtaking architecture, philosophical musings, and, of course, blood-soaked spectacles that had the populace spilling their wine in excitement. Gladiators battling to the death, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of sweat, blood, and, let's not forget, sand. Yes, sand, that unassuming granule that became the unsung hero of the Colosseum. But before you envision a gladiator's epic struggle, let us delve into the drab history of how the fine art of sand floor raking protocols came to be. Spoiler alert, it's more riveting than it sounds. Hashtag regional variations over time. First off, let's talk about the regional variations. Much like pizza toppings in modern Italy, the Romans had their own local flavors when it came to sand raking. In the heart of Rome, the sand was often finely ground, sourced from the banks of the Tiber River. It was known as Tiberian sugar among gladiators, a term of endearment that belied its gritty reality. Gladiators in southern provinces preferred coarser sand, possibly because they were more accustomed to the sandy beaches of the Mediterranean. Rumor has it that gladiators from Pompeii were known to throw in a few seashells for ambience, giving their arena a touch of seaside charm. As you ventured north, however, the sand quality took a drastic turn. In Gaul, for instance, the sand was mixed with clay due to the region's wet climate. This resulted in a muddy mess that made for slippery footing, ideal for comedic slips but not exactly conducive to brutal combat. It's no wonder that the Gauls were less enthusiastic about gladiatorial games. Their raking protocols were more akin to a farmer's plow than a warrior's arena. ##### laws, edicts, taxes, ledgers. Now, you might think that the Romans had more important things to focus on than the nuances of sand raking. But you'd be wrong. The sands of the Colosseum were, in fact, subject to a slew of laws and edicts. The Lex Arena, a notoriously verbose piece of legislation, dictated the sand depth, texture, and even the raking angle. The irony? This law was drafted after a particularly embarrassing incident involving a gladiator named Gaius, who slipped on a poorly raked floor and inadvertently defeated his opponent by falling on him. Gaius became a folk hero, but the Senate was not amused. Taxes on sand were equally absurd. The sabulum tax was introduced to fund gladiatorial games, which meant that sand became a taxable commodity. Citizens were encouraged to bring their own sand to the games to avoid tax liabilities. This led to a rather humorous situation where gladiators would sometimes find themselves fighting on a mixture of imported sands, leading to varying degrees of grip and potentially disastrous outcomes. Imagine the chaos when a seasoned veteran from Rome found himself battling on a layer of coarse Gaulish sand, slipping and sliding like a toddler on a freshly waxed floor. The Romans took their sand records seriously. Ledgers were meticulously kept, detailing sand types, quantities, and even the venues where they were used. In the Grand Archives of Rome, one could find entries like 10 sacks of Tiberian sugar to Colosseum, 5 sacks of Gaulish mud to Lutetia. These ledgers were the bane of many a scribe's existence, filled with the minutiae of sand logistics rather than grand military conquests. If only they had known how their records would be the envy of modern bureaucrats. #### logistics and supply chains. Speaking of logistics, the Romans were masters of the supply chain, even when it came to sand. This was no small feat, given the distances involved. Sand was transported via a network of roads and waterways, often by disgruntled slaves who had the joy of hauling sacks of sand across rugged terrain. The sand trade became so lucrative that it inspired the creation of the Sand Guild, a group of merchants dedicated to the sourcing and distribution of sand to arenas across the empire. They had meetings that were shockingly similar to today's corporate conferences, minus the PowerPoint presentations, of course. Instead, there were wax tablets, quills, and a lot of grumbling about sand inflation. The guild's most famous member was a man named Cornelius Rex, who, legend has it, once attempted to corner the market on Tiberian sugar by disguising himself as a gladiator and slipping into an arena to assess the sand quality firsthand. His ruse was discovered when he accidentally raked the sand while attempting to win a fight, leading to a riot among the audience who thought it was all part of the show. Cornelius ended up losing his business but gaining a reputation as the Sand Gladiator, a title that was both embarrassing and oddly prestigious. Record keeping with lots of specifics. If there's one thing the Romans loved, it was their record keeping. The archives of sand protocols were filled with details that would make even the most thorough accountant blush. Each arena had its own specific sand requirements. The Colosseum, for instance, demanded a perfectly raked sand surface, which was defined as being exactly 5 centimeters deep and raked at a 30-degree angle. Failure to meet these specifications could lead to fierce penalties, including banishment from the arena, or worse, being forced to work in the Sand Guild's accounting department. The Sand Raking Manual of 142 AD, authored by the esteemed Quintus Sabulus, outlined the proper techniques for raking sand. He emphasized the importance of the rake-to-sand ratio, which was a complex formula that included variables such as gladiator weight, weapon type, and the presence of any previous bloodstains, a crucial factor for maintaining the aesthetic of a battle. The manual also offered tips on how to effectively remove loose sand and debris, techniques that would be the envy of any modern janitorial service. Quintus even went so far as to suggest the use of different rakes for different types of sand. For Tiberian sugar, he wrote, use a fine-toothed rake for optimal texture. For Gaulish mud, one should employ a broader rake with a sturdy handle to withstand the muck. The fact that such a manual existed is a testament to how seriously the Romans took their sand management. Who knew that the fate of gladiators could hinge on a well-raked floor? One surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, let's take a moment to discuss a particularly grotesque anecdote that emerged from these sand floor raking protocols. In a rather infamous incident known as the Great Sand Mishap of 87 AD, an overzealous sand raker, a man named Lucius, decided to experiment with a new technique he had devised. Believing he could enhance the audience's experience, he thought it would be a great idea to mix in a bit of lime to make the sand glow under the sunlight. Unfortunately, nobody considered the consequences of this bright idea. The lime reacted with the blood spilled during the games, creating a horrifying spectacle as the sand turned a ghastly shade of red. The audience, initially excited by the bright colors, quickly recoiled in horror as they realized they were witnessing an unintended reenactment of a horror play. Gladiators, slipping and sliding in the bizarre concoction, became unwitting participants in a macabre ballet of chaos. The incident was so unsettling that the Senate convened an emergency meeting to discuss the future of sand raking protocols. Lucius was summarily executed, but not before he managed to inadvertently inspire the saying, "When in doubt, leave the lime out." His legacy, though tragic, served as a cautionary tale for future sand rakers. Sometimes, less truly is more. Conclusion. So, there you have it, a rather drab yet oddly fascinating exploration of the history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. From regional variations and legal edicts to logistics and grotesque mishaps, the world of sand management was just as chaotic as the gladiators who fought upon it. While the blood and glory of the arenas might capture headlines, it's the unsung heroes wielding their rakes in the shadows who truly shaped the experience of the games. Next time you find yourself in a sandy arena, Be it a beach or a backyard, take a moment to appreciate the layers of history beneath your toes. Who knows? You might just be standing atop the remnants of a long-forgotten sand-raking protocol, a testament to the chaos that once reigned in the name of entertainment. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. When we think of ancient Rome, images of grand colosseums filled with the roar of thousands, gladiators clad in armor, and epic battles to the death spring to mind. Yet, beneath the surface of this thrilling spectacle lies an entire world of minor figures, petty rules, and intricate protocols that govern not only the lives of the gladiators but also the very sands upon which they fought. The sand floor raking protocols may seem mundane to the modern observer, but a closer look reveals a fascinating tapestry of historical minutiae that shaped this iconic aspect of Roman entertainment. #####minor figures and petty rules. The Roman Colosseum, or Flavian Amphitheater, was not just a battleground, it was a highly organized and regulated venue. A plethora of lesser-known figures played crucial roles in the arena's operations. Among them was the haruspices, a priestly figure responsible for interpreting omens, often the entrails of sacrificed animals, before the games commenced. While he had no direct influence on the gladiators, his approval was essential for ensuring a favorable atmosphere, which might have indirectly impacted the perception of the sand's purity. Equally significant was the Sandarius, the overseer of the sand floor. His role was to ensure that the arena's sand was properly raked and arranged before each match. An example of the meticulous attention to detail can be found in the records from the year 80 AD, when the Colosseum was inaugurated. According to historian Suetonius, the sand was raked into a specific pattern believed to symbolize the flow of blood, with careful attention given to the depth and texture, which could affect a gladiator's footing, vital for both performance and survival. The petty rules surrounding the sand were of paramount importance. One of the lesser-known regulations dictated that the sand had to be raked in a circular pattern before a contest, a deviation from which could result in disciplinary action against the Sandarius. In a society where the gods were believed to intervene in human affairs, such minutiae were taken seriously. The case of Marius, a Sandarius punished in 27 AD for failing to rake the sand in the prescribed manner, exemplifies the stringent enforcement of these protocols. As a punishment, Marius was banished to a lesser amphitheater, where he was forced to rake coarse gravel instead of sand. ####Case studies with dates and lists. The history of sand raking protocols is filled with fascinating case studies that reveal the complexities of managing the arena. One notable instance occurred in 49 BC during the games held by Julius Caesar. Historical accounts indicate that the sand was meticulously raked to an exact depth of 5 inches. This was deemed optimal for combat, providing both grip and cushioning for the gladiators. The Sandarius was required to report to Caesar himself, who had taken a keen interest in the proceedings. A list of gladiators slated for combat was even inscribed in the sand, a practice that persisted for decades. In another case, the Games of 93 AD hosted by Emperor Domitian showcased the evolution of sand protocols. A team of Sandarii was documented to have introduced the use of a specialized tool known as the rake of honor, which featured decorative engravings of victorious gladiators. This innovation was spurred by a desire to elevate the status of the sandarius, who had previously been viewed as a lowly laborer. Records show that the raking of sand was so important that a festival was established in its honor, celebrated annually with processions and rituals to bless the sand. ### Comparisons to other regions. The Roman approach to arena sand management is particularly fascinating when compared to practices in other regions of the ancient world. In the gladiatorial arenas of ancient Greece, for instance, sand was often replaced with a combination of dirt and gravel, primarily due to the different styles of combat and the types of events held. The Greeks favored wrestling and pankration, where the footing was less significant than the grappling techniques employed. This led to less emphasis on the texture and arrangement of the ground, contrasting sharply with the Romans' meticulous protocols. In the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire, such as in the arenas of Antioch and Alexandria, the sand floor protocols were similarly rigorous, but with regional variations. For instance, in Antioch, the sand was often mixed with olive oil to create a glistening surface, believed to enhance visibility for spectators. This practice sparked debates among gladiators, who argued that the slick surface favored certain fighting styles over others, leading to tensions that occasionally erupted into full-blown riots. ### Archaeological tidbits. Archaeological findings have provided profound insights into the life of the sandarius and the importance of sand raking protocols. Excavations at the Colosseum have unearthed remnants of ancient rakes and tools that were used to manage the sand. One particularly intriguing find was a set of bronze rakes inscribed with the names of notable sandarii, suggesting that the role was more esteemed than previously assumed. These artifacts have led historians to reconsider the social dynamics at play within the arena. In addition to tools, the discovery of amphorae containing traces of various sands has sparked debate over the types of sand used in different regions of the empire. Sand from the shores of Sicily, for instance, was often favored for its fine grain, while sand from the banks of the Tiber was considered less desirable due to its coarse texture. This choice of material reflects the Romans' obsession with quality, extending even to the ground upon which their gladiators fought. ### Rhetorical questions to hook curiosity. What if the fate of a gladiator hinged not just on skill and strength but on the very texture of the sand beneath their feet? Did the meticulous raking of this seemingly mundane substance truly have the power to influence the outcome of life-or-death battles in the arena? ### Conclusion. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols may not capture the thrill of gladiatorial combat, but it reveals the meticulous attention to detail that characterized the Roman approach to entertainment. Through minor figures and petty rules, case studies rich in historical detail, comparisons with other regions, and archaeological discoveries, we glimpse the hidden depths of an arena where even the sand played a pivotal role in the drama of life and death. The legacy of the sandarius, the significance of the raking protocols, and the idea that something as simple as sand could shape destinies linger long after the gladiators have faded into the annals of history. In a world where every detail mattered, the sand was not merely a backdrop, it was a crucial participant in the grand spectacle of Roman life. The Drab History of Roman Gladiator Sand Floor Raking Protocols. The history of Roman gladiators is often romanticized with images of epic battles in grand arenas, yet beneath the surface of this thrilling spectacle lies a surprisingly drab yet crucial aspect of the operation: the raking of the sand floor. While gladiators earned their fame through blood and valor, the maintenance of the arena floor was a meticulous endeavor dictated by minor figures and petty rules that shaped the daily lives of those involved in the games. ###minor figures and petty rules. In the vast hierarchy of Roman society, gladiators stood as both celebrities and captives, celebrated for their prowess in the arena but also subjected to strict regulations. Among the most overlooked figures in this hierarchy were the rarius and the lanista. The rarius, a minor but essential role, was responsible for the maintenance of the arena's sand floor. This seemingly mundane position was pivotal. The quality and consistency of the sand could mean the difference between a spectacular fight and a disastrous one. The lanista, the trainer and manager of the gladiators, was responsible not only for the fighters' training but also for the overall presentation of the games. This included ensuring that the sand was raked to perfection. It was said that the ideal sand was neither too coarse nor too fine, striking a balance that could absorb the bloodshed without turning the arena into a muddy pit. Thus, the lanista would issue petty regulations to the rarius, dictating the type of rakes to be used, the depth of the sand, and the frequency of maintenance. One such decree, discovered in fragments of a lost manuscript dating to 73 BCE, stated that the sand must be raked daily before the sun rises, lest the honor of the games be tarnished by unsightly bloodstains from previous battles. The rarius was tasked with this daily ritual, often starting his work in darkness, armed with the knowledge that any failure in his duties could lead to public disgrace or worse, a reprimand from the lanista. #### Case studies with dates and lists. The importance of sand raking can be illustrated through various case studies. One of the earliest records we have, from 80 CE during the inauguration of the Colosseum by Emperor Titus, details an extensive preparation process that included not only the raking of the sand but also the introduction of different colored sands to enhance the visual spectacle. 1. Inauguration of the Colosseum, 80 CE. Date, 80 CE. Sand color, golden yellow, imported from North Africa. Raking protocol, raked thrice daily leading up to the games. Outcome: the first games were attended by an estimated 50,000 spectators, with reports of the sand absorbing the blood of over 2,000 gladiators. 2. The Games of Trajan, 107 CE. Date: 107 CE. Sand color, light brown, locally sourced. Raking protocol, 24 hours prior to the event, raked with wooden rakes to create a smooth surface. Outcome: the games included exotic animals, and the clean sand was said to enhance the contrast of the animals' vibrant colors against the surface. 3. The Morning Games of 124 CE. Date: 124 CE. Sand color, mixed with crushed seashells to create a whitish hue. Raking protocol, raked only once, and only after a light rain, to avoid disturbing the delicate mixture. Outcome: The games were conducted in memory of a popular gladiator. However, the inadequate raking led to several slips and falls during the event, resulting in a series of embarrassing moments for the lanista. These examples illustrate that the seemingly trivial task of raking the sand was a matter of great significance, where even minor deviations could lead to catastrophic results. ### comparisons to other regions. While the Roman approach to arena maintenance was unique, comparisons can be drawn to other regions and their methods of preparing for combat sports. The ancient Greeks had their own version of gladiatorial games, known as the agon, but their arenas were primarily designed for athletic competitions like wrestling and running. The Greeks focused more on the turf than on sand, often using a mixture of dirt and clay. In contrast, the Mesoamerican ball game, played by the Olmec and later the Maya and Aztecs, utilized a rubber ball and involved a court made of stone. Maintenance protocols in these regions included the periodic raking of the court to ensure a level playing surface, but without the added layer of bloodshed, the maintenance was more about aesthetics than practical safety. In the East, the tradition of combat sports evolved into the martial arts of Japan, where the tatami mats were carefully laid out and maintained for both safety and tradition. Each mat was meticulously crafted and kept clean, with rituals surrounding their upkeep that echoed the Romans' commitment to their sand floors. ###archaeological tidbits. Archaeological evidence of the importance of sand floor maintenance has been discovered in numerous excavation sites of ancient Roman amphitheaters. For instance, in Pompeii, the remnants of a small amphitheater revealed an intricate drainage system designed to manage the runoff from the sand. This system was critical, as rain could quickly turn the arena into a quagmire. Excavations in the Colosseum have uncovered tools used by rarii, including rakes made from wood and metal, proving that these mundane implements were essential to the grand spectacle of gladiatorial games. A recent find in 2021 revealed a cache of rakes paired with inscriptions indicating the names of rarii who had worked in the arena, providing a glimpse into their lives and the respect they garnered for their labor. Additionally, studies of the sand itself have offered insights into the level of sophistication involved in arena maintenance. Analysis has revealed that Romans often blended different types of sand for optimal performance, mixing fine grains for absorbency and coarser grains for traction, a practice that would not be fully appreciated until the development of modern sports science. ###pondering the past. As we delve into the minutiae of gladiatorial arena maintenance, one cannot help but ask, how did a society so focused on spectacle and grandeur manage to overlook the vital role of those who tended to the sand? Furthermore, what does the meticulous nature of these raking protocols reveal about the Roman attitude toward honor, discipline, and the art of war? In conclusion, the drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols may seem trivial at first glance, yet it unveils a tapestry of minor figures, petty rules, and intricate practices that were essential to the functioning of one of history's most celebrated spectacles. The next time you envision the clash of swords and the roar of the crowd, remember that beneath the blood-soaked arena lay layers of sand, carefully raked into submission by the unsung heroes of the amphitheater. ###The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. In the grand narrative of Roman history, the flamboyant spectacles of gladiatorial combat often overshadow the more mundane yet equally fascinating details of the arena's daily operations. Among these, the protocols for raking the sand floors of the Colosseum, a seemingly trivial task, reveal a wealth of minor figures, petty rules, and intriguing case studies that speak volumes about the culture of ancient Rome. This drab yet essential aspect of gladiatorial preparation deserves a closer look, for it intertwines with the very fabric of Roman society and its obsession with order, cleanliness, and performance. ###### minor figures and petty rules. The management of the arena was not merely the domain of grandiose figures like emperors and gladiators, it involved a host of lesser-known individuals whose roles were vital to the spectacle. Among them were the Harini rakes, the unsung heroes of the sand. These individuals were responsible for the meticulous upkeep of the arena floor, ensuring that the sand was evenly distributed and free of hazards. Their importance cannot be understated, as the quality of the sand could directly impact the performance and safety of the gladiators. The protocols for raking the sand were surprisingly detailed. For instance, sand was to be raked daily, with special attention given on days leading up to major games. The Harini rakes followed a specific pattern. First, they would remove any bloodstains and debris from previous contests, a task often performed with wooden rakes that had prongs shaped like the claws of a beast, symbolizing the very combat that had taken place. After clearing the area, they would smooth the surface, creating a fine layer of sand that was neither too loose nor too compact. In 80 AD, during the inaugural games of the Colosseum, Emperor Vespasian mandated stricter guidelines for the sand raking process. This included the use of a specific type of sand sourced from the banks of the Tiber River, believed to absorb moisture better and prevent slippage. Historical records from this period indicate that a team of 10 Harini rakes worked tirelessly to prepare the arena, their labor often going unnoticed amidst the roar of the crowd. #######Case studies with dates and lists. To understand the nuances of sand raking protocols, we can explore a few notable case studies from the annals of Roman history. 1. The Games of 264 BC. Event: the first recorded gladiatorial games in Rome. Raking protocol: sand was raked using a simple wooden tool, with no official guidelines, leading to uneven surfaces that resulted in slips and falls. Outcome: discontent among spectators over gladiator performance led to calls for improved standards in arena maintenance. 2. The Ludi Romani of 22 BC. Event: a week-long festival featuring gladiatorial combats. Raking protocol: introduction of a two-phase raking process. First, a coarse rake to remove debris, followed by a finer rake to smooth the surface. Outcome: the smooth sand contributed to a record number of spectators, with accounts noting a 30% increase in attendance compared to previous years. 3. The Great Games of 80 AD. Event: inauguration of the Colosseum. Raking protocol: strict adherence to a 7-step protocol, including the use of Tiber sand and mandatory inspections by a lanista, gladiator trainer. Outcome: praised as a model for future events, The games were noted for their safe and dramatic performances, leading to a surge in gladiatorial popularity. 4. The Ludi Plebii of 200 AD. Event, a series of games dedicated to the lower classes of Roman society. Raking protocol, an experimental mixture of volcanic ash and sand was used, leading to a unique texture that improved traction. Outcome: the experimental raking method resulted in fewer injuries, prompting discussions about the potential for sand innovation in arenas. These case studies illustrate that even the act of raking sand was subject to evolution and refinement, dictated by the demands of the time and the expectations of the audience. Comparisons to other regions. While the Romans may have taken the lead in developing detailed protocols for arena maintenance, they were not alone in their appreciation for clean and orderly spaces. In ancient Greece, the agora, public square, was meticulously maintained, with raking and clearing done by designated citizens. However, the Greeks focused more on philosophical debate while the Romans prioritized entertainment and spectacle, leading to differing standards in arena upkeep. In contrast, the gladiatorial games of the Celtic tribes in Gaul were far less formalized. Evidence suggests that their arenas were often simple dirt circles and fields rather than grand colosseums. The lack of standardized raking protocols meant that the condition of the fighting surface varied greatly, often leading to more chaotic and unpredictable encounters. Furthermore, in the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire, such as in the Hellenistic cities, the focus shifted from gladiatorial combat to more theatrical forms of entertainment, such as chariot racing. In these arenas, the maintenance of the sand was less of a concern compared to the quality of the track, which was often stoned or paved, leading to a different set of challenges regarding upkeep. Archaeological tidbits. The study of ancient arenas has unearthed fascinating archaeological tidbits that shed light on sand raking protocols. In Pompeii, excavations have revealed the remnants of raking tools similar to those described in historical texts. These tools bear inscriptions indicating their use in the arenas, with some even branded with the name of the lanista responsible for their maintenance. Inscriptions found in the ruins of the Colosseum also reference specific types of sand, suggesting a broader trade network dedicated to sourcing arena materials. Such findings highlight the extensive logistics involved in maintaining the grand spectacles of Rome, including the procurement of sand from various regions of Italy. Additionally, the discovery of ancient mosaics depicting gladiatorial combats often features detailed backgrounds that include the arena's sand floor. These artistic representations provide insight into the aesthetic concerns of the time, indicating that the appearance of the sand was as crucial as its functionality. Rhetorical questions that hook curiosity. What drove the Romans to invest so much effort into the raking of sand, when the spectacle of blood and violence was the main draw? Did the meticulous attention to detail in the arena reflect a deeper societal obsession with order, even amidst chaos? Conclusion. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols, while seemingly mundane, reveals a microcosm of Roman society's values and priorities. It serves as a reminder that even the most extravagant spectacles were underpinned by a network of labor and regulation that ensured their success. As we ponder the bloody battles of the gladiators, let us not forget the silent yet significant contributions of the Harini rakes, whose committed efforts shaped the very ground upon which history was made. The next time one gazes upon the ruins of grand arenas, consider the stories hidden within the grains of sand, tales of labor, regulation, and the ever-present desire for perfection in a world defined by violence. The drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols. The ancient Roman Colosseum is often romanticized as a grand arena filled with roaring crowds, majestic gladiators, and the thrill of combat. Yet, beneath this veneer of excitement lay a drab, often overlooked aspect of the gladiatorial games, the meticulous protocols governing the maintenance and raking of the sand floors. While it may seem a trivial detail in a world dominated by blood-soaked battles, the raking of sand was an essential ritual that signified order, decorum, and even superstition within the chaotic realm of gladiatorial combat. #### Minor figures and petty rules. In the grand tapestry of Roman history, one might assume that only the most notable figures shaped the gladiatorial games. However, lurking in the shadows were minor figures whose bureaucratic roles dictated the day-to-day operations of the arena. Among them was the arena raker, racketer, an often overlooked position responsible for the even distribution of sand. This individual was not merely a janitor but a key player in the spectacle, executing the precise raking patterns that would prevent injury, ensure fairness, and maintain the aesthetic appeal of the arena. The Romans were known for their love of order, and their attention to detail extended even to the type of sand used in the arena. A directive from Emperor Augustus in 27 BCE specified that the sand should be fine and clean, emphasizing the importance of appearance and safety. Minor figures such as the sand inspector, sabulator, often had the unenviable task of ensuring compliance with these edicts. Violations could lead to reprimands, or worse yet, being ostracized from the prestigious world of gladiatorial games. ###Case studies with dates and lists. One notable case study revolves around the infamous arena of Pompeii, where a series of gladiatorial games in 79 CE were marred by unexpected outcomes due to improper sand raking. Reports from that time suggest that the sand was unevenly distributed, leading to multiple injuries among the combatants. Following this debacle, the local magistrate issued a decree on October 15, 79 CE, outlining the 10 Commandments of sand raking, which included: 1. Sand must be raked to a depth of no less than 10 centimeters. 2. The raking pattern must be uniform, with no deviations allowed. 3. Sand should be sifted for debris, ensuring a clean fighting surface. 4. Raking must be completed at least 1 hour before the games begin. 5. Rakers must wear specific sandals designed for optimal traction. 6. A designated sand monitor must oversee the process. 7. Rakers must not be intoxicated during their duties. 8. Any raking deemed insufficient must be redone immediately. 9. A public report of sand conditions must be filed post-event. 10. failure to comply may lead to temporary suspension from future events. The consequences of neglecting these protocols were laid bare when several gladiators suffered injuries that could have been prevented. The ensuing public outcry led to the execution of the arena raker on charges of malfeasance in the maintenance of sacred space. Another case study, from 120 CE, highlights the raking practices in the Eastern Roman provinces. In the city of Ephesus, a notable gladiatorial exhibition drew the attention of Emperor Hadrian. The sand in the arena was raked in intricate patterns reminiscent of the waves of the Aegean Sea, a practice that had cultural significance. However, this artistic endeavor resulted in an uneven surface that caused one of the main gladiators, a popular figure named Tiberius, to lose his footing and suffer a humiliating defeat. The incident prompted Hadrian to emphasize the importance of practicality over artistry in future events. Comparisons to other regions. While Rome was obsessed with the meticulous maintenance of its gladiatorial arenas, other regions had their own unique approaches to sand floor management. In the Greek amphitheaters, for example, sand was often replaced with crushed stone or specialized flooring materials to accommodate their style of theatrical performances. The Greeks focused more on the aesthetics of the performance rather than the practicality of the fighting surface. This difference highlights the cultural divergence between Roman and Greek entertainment. While Romans revered the spectacle of combat, Greeks leaned toward the drama of storytelling. In the Eastern territories, particularly in the arenas of Carthage, gladiatorial games were often held on grass or dirt rather than sand. This choice was partly due to the diverse climate and the availability of materials. However, the lack of sand brought its own challenges. Gladiators in Carthage noted that the dirt would stick to their bodies, causing them to grapple with not only their opponents but also the harsh elements of the arena. The maintenance of a dirt floor involved its own set of protocols, including regular watering to prevent dust clouds that could obscure vision during fights. Archaeological tidbits. Archaeological findings have shed light on the raking protocols and materials used in Roman arenas. Excavations in Pompeii revealed a system of drainage channels beneath the sand that allowed for quick removal of blood and debris, highlighting the Romans' advanced understanding of sanitation. Additionally, remnants of specialized tools used for raking have been uncovered, including wooden rakes with specific tooth configurations designed for evenly distributing sand. A particularly fascinating find came from the ruins of the Colosseum, where researchers discovered ancient inscriptions dedicated to the god of cleanliness, Deus Mundicii, suggesting that the Romans believed in divine oversight of the arena's cleanliness. The inscriptions often depicted rakers in prayer before commencing their duties, underscoring the belief that a properly maintained arena was not just a matter of practicality, but a sacred obligation. Another intriguing tidbit comes from the remains of gladiator barracks in Ostia, where evidence of sand raking rituals was found etched into the walls. Gladiators would often hold informal competitions to see who could rake the sand in the most aesthetically pleasing pattern, leading to a strange blend of camaraderie and rivalry. This whimsical competition is a reminder that even in the drudgery of protocol, humanity and creativity found a way to flourish. Hashtag the rhetorical questions. What happens when the meticulous attention to detail, like raking sand, becomes a matter of life and death in the arena? How far would a gladiator go to ensure their footing was secure, knowing that a simple misstep could lead to their doom? As we delve into the drab history of Roman gladiator sand floor raking protocols, it becomes evident that this seemingly mundane aspect of the games was intertwined with culture, superstition, and the very fabric of Roman society. The sand raking protocols, while overlooked by most, played a crucial role in maintaining the spectacle that defined an era. Gladiators and their fates were intricately linked to the rakers, whose efforts ensured that the arena remained a stage for both glory and brutality. In conclusion, while the gladiators fought for honor and life or death, the sand beneath their feet was raked with care, reflecting a civilization that thrived on both chaos and order. The story of the arena rakers may be drab in its details, but it is a vital thread in the broader narrative of Roman culture and its obsession with spectacle. A history that is often overshadowed by the bloodshed of the arena reveals the complexity of human endeavor, where the mundane can become a matter of life, death, and legacy. And that's a wrap. We've sipped through the wild world of topic, where the unexpected is just the norm in disguise. Who knew that? Insert witty line about the topic. Here's a surprising nugget to leave you with. Did you know that? Insert surprising closing fact. Just goes to show, there's always more than meets the eye. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of knowledge, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And if you're hungry for more, dive into our related episodes where we unpack even more mind-blowing insights. Oh, and don't forget to turn on loop so this episode plays on repeat until you drift off to dreamland. Sweet dreams and happy watching.